once you get into the realm of like community development, right now I'm a lead comm dev at Gun. And once you get into the realm of that, a lot of it too is trying to identify potential pain points for communities early on in the development stage, trying to make sure that the team develops around with communities in mind, and how communities can leverage features in game to, to help them, create their content or create sub communities and so on and so forth. So, to try to minimize it is such a tough thing because, if somebody were to get a job in community management going off of that nifty one sentence answer, they would immediately be hit by a truck of 90 million other things that they didn't expect.
I'm so grateful to have Matt here, because I think we both actually have the same vision for tonight. We want to have a deep conversation. So Matt, welcome here. How are you doing tonight?
I'm doing great, first of all. Second of all, I wanted to say real quick, thank you so much for having me here. Community management is something that I got into because I had some really great experiences with some community managers when I was just a content creator. And it led to me being like that right there, that's what I want to do. And so I guess that like uniquely driven focus toward community work, it's just a passion that's stayed with me. Now years and years in, and having worked on a couple of different games, I'm still extremely passionate about community. And so I just wanted to say that I really appreciate your platform here to discuss these types of topics. I think what you guys do is great. Providing this channel between the gamers and the folks that help make games or make games. I think that's amazing. And I think that community is something that would benefit great from this kind of a conversation. So I'm extremely enthusiastic and excited to be here to talk about this. So thank you for that.
Oh, thank you, man. By the way, thank you, Chad, all for tuning up here. I see you all, man. You guys are so great. Thank you so much. And like always, I always want to invite you guys, be active, send us questions, let us know what you want to know, what you think, because this is not only a conversation between me and Matt here. I want to have a conversation with you too, guys. I want to know what's on your hearts. Dan Mitri is in here. And look, you can remember you guys had drinks. That's amazing. You see, at the whiskey bar. There you go.
That's right.
There.
I met Dan. I was walking down the street with a couple other content creators, and they were like, "We're going over here. We're going to meet up with somebody." And it, the two groups kind of intersected, and it was Dan. And I was like, "Oh, this is pretty rad," And he was like, "We're going to get some whiskeys. You want to come?" And I was like, "Absolutely, I want to come." So like within 2 seconds of meeting him, he was like, "Let's go to the whiskey bar." And it was probably one of the coolest experiences. That was like one of my first E3s. And just all around an amazing person. And so I still owe him a return on that whiskey too. So hopefully all this crazy COVID stuff will end and we can catch up and get that done.
Oh yeah, we all.
Oh, he remembers the location and everything. That's amazing.
That is. Matt, can you explain us quick, just for dummies, what does a community manager do?
We actually talked a little bit about this in the pre-show, and it's something that it's a question that I kind of love and hate, because when people ask it, they always want like a short answer. They want you to say one sentence and put like community management in this neat little box and hand it to them. And it's never that easy. Community managers do a little bit of everything. Okay. And depending on where you are, every studio kind of runs a little differently. There are some that are like, you're going to wear 80 different hats. There are some that are like, well, we want you to just stick to this or stick to that. So the short answer, the neat answer that I give everybody is, a community manager is the voice of the players to the development team and the voice of the development team to the players. That's a really great, simple answer, right? Like I take information from this group and I distill it and I deliver it to this group and, back and forth. Right. Mm-hmm. Now, it's obviously a lot more involved than that. And once you get into different disciplines like community development and things like that, or in some places they call it like global community leads or whatever the case, things change. But at the root of it, what it is we're the representative of the players to the developers and the representative of the developers to the players, because those two groups, they have different ways of speaking, different ways of communicating, different things on their plate, and so we do that nice, neat transition in between. And, we take patch notes that come out of a Jira and they look like another language, and we turn that into something that the community can digest.
Hmm.
That's a good small example of something that a community manager has to be capable of doing. We also have to take the crazy lingo that the community uses to describe what they see in game, and we have to turn that into something that the dev team can act on. So it's a constant there. But
Hmm.
again, once you get into the realm of like community development, right now I'm a lead comm dev at Gun. And once you get into the realm of that, a lot of it too is trying to identify potential pain points for communities early on in the development stage, trying to make sure that the team develops around with communities in mind, and how communities can leverage features in game to help them, create their content, or create sub communities and so on and so forth. So to try to minimize it is such a tough thing, because, if somebody were to get a job in community management going off of that nifty one sentence answer, they would immediately be hit by a truck of 90 million other things that they didn't expect. It's a tricky area. It's one that not a lot of folks seem to understand. And I think that's why this conversation hopefully will help a little bit too.
I have two questions of what you just told us. First off, it seems like you need a lot of skills as a community manager, right? And how I understand is there's not like a specific thing you can study to get
No.
a community position, right?
Yeah.
So, so maybe we split it up. First, what skills does a community manager need?
Well, it's a lot of soft skills. It's a lot of soft skills. It's being able, you need to have an understanding of games and how games are made and things like that. Because again, these are just small examples. So don't take this as, well, that's all he does, but
Hmm.
the patch notes example is a good example, because something like that, you need to know what you're reading, right? So you have to have a bit more of an understanding of how games are made, but you don't have to be a developer. A lot of it's soft skills, being able to read and react, and be able to talk to people and manage conversations, and being able to kind of be the firefighter of certain things, and being able to, just being better at communicating, which it's funny that I stumble on my answer as I'm talking about needing to be good at communicating. Maybe I'm a little rusty, but yeah, you got to be pretty, again, though, it's a lot of soft skills that you want to test for. And it's a lot of being able to, speak freely, and be comfortable, and be able to get in there, learn the thing, and then be able to take that knowledge and send it out, so that even when you're presented with a situation on the development side that maybe you didn't understand prior, because again, let's be honest, we're not developers, right? Um, so, we're not under the hood of the game. So sometimes there are things you hear that you don't quite fully understand, but you're surrounded by the team that can help kind of inform you. And then you need to have the soft skills to take that information and turn it into something that the community can run with and digest. So there's a lot of that, to be completely honest. There's a lot of conversations where I'm in a room with guys that are, they're engineers and programmers and designers and things, and they're telling me, well, this is what's going on, and I'm saying, I'm going to need more than that. And they'll run me through the quick and dirty, game dev school, and then I need to be able to take that info out to the community, and fill them in on it.
Hmm. Yeah, I understand.
And my buddy Screamer in the chat actually said something that's 100% accurate. Being a CM is also being able to put up with a lot of crap. Yes. Thick skin, that kind of stuff. Yeah. That's unfortunately a large part of it too. But again, we talk about those soft skills.
Mhm. Um, I think this dealing with a lot of crap is probably harder when you're just starting out, and over the time you get used to it, right?
Yeah. Yeah. It wears on you too. Burnout is a real thing for community managers, because there's two schools of thought here. When you're just starting out, you don't, I'll get it. Let me handle just starting out second, actually, because I think that's
Hmm.
a bit longer of an answer. But the longer somebody is in community, you start to feel this burnout, this fade in your enthusiasm for it, and it's something that you really have to kind of fight, because you know I always talk about the 5-year mark. It seems like a lot of CMs hit the 5-year mark, and they're just at their fill of hearing it, and they start to feel that burnout where, maybe something that's not that serious, it gets to you more, you know what I mean? And
Mm-hmm.
your skin is a little kind of, you've got some breaks in the armor, you know what I mean? After years of doing it. Um, I find that, keeping a good work-life balance and making sure you keep perspective on the things that you enjoy and, reminding yourself why you're doing it and, keeping that perspective on why you're specifically in community is helpful too. But burnout's real and it does wear on you. In the beginning, though, the thing that I wanted to bring up in the beginning, and this is something that I feel very strongly about, I think that there's a lot of misconceptions on what a community manager is and what a community manager's role is with the community. Both on the community side and on the new CM side. Because again, there is no like, community manager school that you go to and they teach you all
Mm-hmm.
these things. Then you come out the other side knowing what you should do. I tune in to hear this phrase work-life balance and immediately feel attacked. Don't we all? How's it going, Necro?
Hey, Necro, how you doing, man?
But so the newer community managers, a lot of them, again, they come in with these soft skills and so they get rolling and they think, well, when the community attacks me or when the community comes at me or when the community is frustrated or the community is kind of like, I don't want to say attack, but they're in a heightened state. Maybe there's a problem in the game or something that's causing a lot of frustration. I'm supposed to just eat that, right? Like I'm supposed to
Mm-hmm.
just meat shield all of that for the development team. And while to an extent that is true, I think that there's a lot of basic relationship dynamics that we need to employ when working with communities and when communities are working with community managers. You know, it, it's like anything else. Be frustrated, be angry, be critical, be all of those things. But understand that you're working with another human being to try to get to an end result that, you're both comfortable with. So I think a lot of young community managers, you see them just taking some abuse that's like, man, you really don't need to deal with that. And I don't know, I'm not commenting on who, trained you in community or anything, but if they convinced you that that's normal, it's not. You shouldn't have to put up with anything more than a conversation with somebody who is potentially frustrated with your product. I mean, we're not saving lives. We're not out there with defibs or anything. There's no
Mm-hmm.
reason for anybody to be that heightened over these conversations. And I think that a lot of younger community managers seem to think like, well, this is just part of the gig. I'm just supposed to get, fired on left and right. And
Mm-hmm.
I think that's kind of sad and it's a disservice to young community managers. I've seen a couple in recent times that have been good friends of mine that I respected very much, respected their skills very much. And I've seen them fizzle out in less than a year and be like, man, I don't need this. I'm going to do something else. And I think that that's because there's this misconception about the role.
Mm-hmm. Um, um, I asked quick the question which was in the chat. Caesar got the question: do the dev teams always listen to community managers? And if
No,
not, why not?
not at all. Not even a little bit always. I wish they always did. Well, no, I don't actually, because you know what? Yeah, I'm wrong too. I'm a human being, but no, they don't. They definitely don't. You know, it's interesting because there was a conversation going on Twitter earlier today about community management and listening to the players and things like that. And at one point I was saying, we take feedback from players and we incorporate that. That's my whole job,
Mm-hmm.
I and it's not uncommon for the development team to get frustrated with the community manager because in the conversations to the community, this is like holy crap. If I could put one phrase in bold italics right now that everybody hears me on, every time you think a community manager only cares about the development team, just remember that the development team thinks that community manager only cares about the community. So the community manager is constantly in a
Mm-hmm.
position where the community has one arm and the dev team has the other arm, and you're both pulling them in half or her in half. It's true because the way I always present it to, like, for instance, new folks that I'm working with on the development side, I say, look, you're going to think I'm only speaking for the community. I assure you, I'm speaking for you guys to them. I don't need to tell the community what the community's problems are. So I'm only talking about the development team's issues. And I don't need to tell the development team what problems they're facing. I don't need to say, hey, Joe level designer, I understand, you're having a problem with this or that or the other thing. You know what I mean? Like, he knows that. She knows that. I need to
Mm-hmm.
tell them what the community thinks. And so it starts to seem like you're only speaking from them. But basically, A good CM is providing a seat at the table for the community by bringing up the things that the community, feel strongly about, and those will be incorporated into the greater discussion on where the game goes from there. But there's far too many. I'm sorry, I'm rambling on.
No, you're good. You're good.
There's far too many elements to it. There's everything from budget to features to scope. All of these things matter when it comes time to work on the game. So do they listen to everything we present? No, but they at least hear it and incorporate it as best they can. They sometimes often find creative other ways to work it into the title as well.
No, it's just I just was reminded of, like, many times I heard the phrase like this or that, studios should listen to their community more, like, you guys should do what the community wants. And then every time this thought pops into my head, like, why do you think you are the community? Why do you think your opinion, or whatever, how many opinions there are, maybe, are the opinion of the community? And it's not like I wanna say like your opinion is not worth it. It's more like, I think if you're a community manager, you probably go through a lot of comments a day, and you probably see, you look into a lot of forums, Reddit, Facebook, social media.
Mhm.
And I think the only question which pops up is like, how do you value these opinions? How do you,
Well,
at the end, how do you decide which opinion you go for? Because as a studio, you probably have to go on some point what a community wants,
mhm.
so you can sell your game. But how do you value the opinions?
It's tricky, and you are right. You know, eh, Again, going back to that conversation earlier, somebody mentioned consulting, right?
Hmm.
And one of the interesting things about consulting is once you consult and you present your consultation, your deliverable to the person the entity you're consulting for, they can go, that's fascinating, and throw the entire thing in the garbage. There's no commitment to the consultation. You know what I'm saying? So um, there's that side of it where I think a lot of people seem to think that games are made by these, these great cooperative efforts between communities and developers. And I think that while that's true in a lot of ways, it's not the end all be all, because again, a game is developed as a creative work from a studio. There's areas, I mean, I'm going through it right now. I obviously can't speak to what it's about, but I mean, we're in early development on a title. And, there are opportunities where we're saying, well, we want to make sure that this is able to be tinkered later as the community weighs in on it. And so you're kind of already carving out those areas where the community can speak up and you can twist and tune those knobs. But the overall development of the game is very much a creative effort from the in-house team. Once
Hmm.
that's out into the world, feedback gets taken in and incorporated. But I mean, there's a level of it that ends up getting, either it falls off the back end because it doesn't fit into the greater design. Core design is something I talk about a lot because, for example, on Friday the 13th, right, we have Jason Voorhees as our killer. If you are playing a lot of Friday the 13th, you can be our most active player on Friday the 13th, and you come to the dev team and say, I would like to see Jason in a tutu.
Hmm.
We're not going to do that. We're not going to, I want to see Jason
Why?
wearing a clown wig. We're not going to be like, right on, we'll get right on it and put a clown wig on Jason. And
Hmm.
that's because that's the feedback clashing with the core design, right?
Hmm.
Now, that core design is important to the creatives that make these games, and we wouldn't have these games without them. So I think that there is all these there's levels to all of this. Now, what the answer I would give when it comes to communities trying to provide their feedback and how that gets presented to the team, one of the things I like the most, and it's something that we do a lot at Gun, it's taking the feedback that we're hearing from them, evaluating if it fits in the core design. If it doesn't fit with the core design, then we say, well, okay, how can we achieve a similar end result for the community that does fit our core design, that does
Hmm.
work with what we want to do? So, you know, a lot of times you're taking their feedback, which is proposing an idea. They're saying, fix it by doing this, right? And the development team says, well, we're not going to do that because that doesn't jive with our core design. So, but then you take the feedback and you whittle that down. Well, what does that problem illustrate to you? If they're saying, just give Jason an Uzi, you're going, well, they feel Jason's underpowered.
Hmm.
So we're not going to give him a machine gun because that's not our game, right? So how can they're obviously feeling like Jason's underpowered. How can we make him more powerful? And so that creative thinking is something that you rely on the team for a lot. So yeah, there are a lot of times where I come to them and I go, this is word for word what they're saying. Here's what I think they're feeling. Here's the percentage of our community that seems to think this. What
Hmm.
can we do about this problem? And sometimes it's as easy as, yeah, let's just give him the Uzi, screw it. And then other times it's, we need to really kind of dig into this and noodle it a little and get where we want to be. Um, I think that that's the mark of a really healthy and positive community team working with their players. Um, to speak more specifically to your topic of how do you balance all of that, because again, one loud voice in the community thinks they're the whole community, right? And that's just, that's not an insult or anything. That's not meant to be abrasive. It's that perspective thing where you're like, well, I mean, I say this on Reddit and people agree with me, that means we all want this, right?
Hmm.
There's a constant community management. People are like, oh, you guys just tweet things. And it's like, yeah, right. I wish we tweet things and Reddit post things and Facebook post things. And then we create an image asset to put on Instagram of the things. And then we post it on our forums. And then we got to read all the things. And then we have to report on all the things. And then we have to figure out what percentage of y'all are saying said thing, like it's never that easy. But a lot of it is, you're trying to pull from all these different sources and then put it together and get a better picture of what size of the community
Hmm.
is really feeling this way. You
So I
mix
think
that.
getting
Oh,
the
I'm
bigger
sorry.
picture. No, I think just getting the bigger picture. I think this is the key right now here, right? I mean,
Yeah,
this is all you can try.
that's right.
Trying to see it from the perspective, from the bigger perspective. I'm sorry, I will fall into your word. Go ahead. I'm sorry. Oh, you
No,
good?
no.
You good?
I was just going to say, basically, once you take all those things, you have to kind of put together what percentage you're looking at and you have to try to weigh it out.
Hmm.
Once you do, again, you can't be swayed by the most vocal, you know what I mean? Because the most vocal is upset right then. The people who are not really on the forums or Reddit are playing the game because they like it the way it is, you mix in a little bit of what's called in-game telemetry, which is actual back-end data of what's going on in game, right?
Hmm.
You mix a little bit of that in and you can compare and contrast what the community is saying to what the data in game is saying. So I remember back on the Division, people would say all the time, like, why are you making changes to the dark zone? Nobody even cares about it. And there was this very vocal group of people saying nobody likes the dark zone. And then we were going and we were looking at the in-game numbers and we were like, well, that's funny because the dark zone is where our current player base spends the bulk of their time. So I kind of think that people like the dark zone, but when you have in-game telemetry to balance out against it, that creates a better case. And let me tell you, you have never seen a person happier than a community manager who has access to in-game telemetry. They're the happiest people on earth because they can look at everything and immediately validate or invalidate what's going on. Man, that's like, God, I get chills thinking about it. It's amazing.
Hmm. Yeah, it reminds me actually of a story about division, but I want to get to that later because I saw we have a couple of questions in the chat again. And guys, what are you doing? All these questions are actually questions I wrote down for myself, so I have to use them now from you.
You can't steal her questions, guys.
Yeah, exactly. Don't steal my questions. Um, Dan asked, how did you get involved with CM work, Matt? Were you a content creator first and used your engagement skills and network to break into the dev pub world?
It's interesting. The way I got into community management is I started making these videos for a game called Ghost Recon Future Soldier, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I was making these how-to videos on kind of how to run different kits, how to, play the scout class best and this class best and that. And their comm dev really enjoyed the videos and said, we want to put them on the website. Is that okay with you? And I said, sure. So they put them up on the website, and that got me in that got me kind of, working with their community team for Ghost Recon. And at the time, I was kind of like always thinking, I don't know, it's hard to explain. I grew up a punk rocker, right? And I
Mm-hmm.
swear that had a lot to do with why I got into community. And I'm going to make this make sense as quickly as possible. Um, the punk scene, very much about like community and the group that you hang with and so on and so forth. And I always had that kind of like shared interest, communal, like we're all buddies because we all dig this thing.
Mm-hmm.
So I started running these Ghost Recon community nights where we would get people together and we would all get into the same lobby, and we would, do these fun community nights, and we'd stream them on Twitch and stuff like that. And they grew and it got really big. And so we started having shirts printed, and we would name an
Mhm.
HVT, which was like an MVP of the night, and send shirts and a little care package out to them. And again, I'm already working with their community team, and they were like, man, these community nights you're doing, they're great. We got to the point where we had like 5 or 6 different people streaming from different angles from the same matches at community nights. And it was like this whole big, huge thing twice a week, next thing you know, and these shirts are getting shipped out all over the globe and everything. And the community team for Ghost Recon was just kind of like, we love what you're doing. We want you to consult on our next Ghost Recon game. And so I signed on as a consultant at first, and they flew me to Paris a few times. I worked with them remotely, and I did some consulting on what later became Ghost Recon Wildlands.
Mhm.
Um, Shortly after the consulting, but before Wildlands launched, because I consulted on that game years before it launched. So in
When
between
was that?
those,
When was that? Which year?
I did my consulting in 2013.
2013. Okay.
Yeah. So some time went by. I spent about a year working with them in that capacity. And then I had a quiet year where, things kind of died down for me a bit. I continued doing my stuff like, content creation and doing community nights and things like that. And then a position came up at Ubisoft for a community manager, and I jumped on it and applied. And, I managed to get in. I started on a game called Trials Fusion, which is a dirt bike
Mhm.
game. And I was like, this is kind of cool. I'll do the dirt bike game. After a short time, as a matter of fact, April of 2016, because I started in 2015, in September
Mhm.
2015 at Ubisoft. In April of 2016, I was out on paternity leave because my daughter was born. And that's when I got the call, and they said, we're going to move you to the division. And so I jumped on the division about a month after launch. And then I was on the division for almost 2 years. Um, from there, I got put onto Rainbow Six Siege, and then I became a community management team lead at Ubisoft, which was cool. I spent some time managing a team of community managers and trying to help them represent their brands and all of that.
Mhm.
After about a year of that, though, I started to realize that as much as I liked working with my CMs on my team, I wasn't an individual contributor anymore. Like, I didn't have one thing that I was funneling into the games that I could
Mhm.
like kind of own. It was more about working with my team. And while I loved working with my team and that was cool, I still needed one area that I could feel was mine. And so after about a year of that, I said, this isn't really, I love it, but it's not really my thing. I don't want to,
Mhm.
I want to contribute. And so
Mhm.
I started looking for comm dev jobs, and that's when I'm a lifelong horror fan. And so when I found out Gun was looking for a comm dev, I was like, I'm on it. Let's go. Forget it. I love horror movies. Let's do it.
That's
So,
great. No, that's really a great story. Really, I'd love to hear that. What's really interesting for me is I heard. I mean, I did a little bit of research, so
oh,
and I saw like one problem in the gaming industry is that I don't know if it's only for smaller games or bigger games. That's I didn't hear, but what I heard is that one problem is that many times the studios take in community managers from their interns, and then they are not very experienced. Is that really a problem? Um, and
it's,
I see
oh, I'm
like
sorry.
your career seems like I mean you had a lot of experience, and you grew basically through every year, everything you saw. Um, so it's different with you, I guess.
Yeah. Honestly, I had some good people looking out for me early on that were willing to talk to me, willing to teach me some things. And I learned from some folks that, really helped kind of shape me as a community professional, I guess. And I think that if somebody possesses the right set of soft skills, anybody that has that set of soft skills, that has that patience, has that understanding, is can verbalize what they're thinking, what they're reading, they have that a bit of an analytical mind as well. I think that they can be a good community manager. It doesn't matter intern or not. It's just with the right like tutelage, I guess, the right mentor, the right teaching.
Hmm.
And I think that that's one of the, look, this is going to sound terrible. And I'm not trying to be like, crappy or anything towards anybody, but I think that there's a lot of folks that get the job of community manager, and then the team kind of says, cool, you're our community manager now. That means we never have to look at our socials again. Go do your thing.
Hmm.
And that's not really, you're not really setting them up to succeed in that scenario.
Hmm. So they're
I
kind of
feel,
lost.
yeah, they're kind of, they have an understanding of what the, he's saying something terrible, clip it. Great. Never change, Screamer. They, they have an understanding of what a community manager does. Don't get me wrong. And I'm not trying to say that they're like naive or anything like that. They have all the same understanding that a lot of successful comms folks have. It's just there's more than that. It has to kind of roll. It has to be an evolutionary thing. I mean, month to month, the world of a community manager changes, and without someone there to help you steer the ship, you're just kind of in a position where, you're trial by fire, and there's no guidance at all. And
Hmm.
I've heard way too many horror stories. Again, as I was mentioning earlier, a couple of people that I know in community that, made it maybe a year before they were like, I'm going to go do something else because I don't need this anymore. That's the number one, like, most in common, the one common element of all of those situations was there was no real guidance. There was no greater understanding, or like, you know, no mission to the community team, which is one person,
Hmm.
and no one to help kind of steer the ship. And I think that's unfortunate, because there's a lot of really talented people out there that are probably right now just kind of fighting their way through.
Hmm. Yeah, definitely with COVID going on. I would like to make us understand something because we talked about Ubisoft, and being a community manager for Ubisoft is totally different for like compared to being a community manager for a small indie studio.
Oh yeah.
So can you please tell us what's the difference? What are the main differences, and how can we, yeah, just go in there.
Well, to start, Ubisoft's a large global company, right? And
Hmm.
as a community manager, a lot of community managers also at UB are working on multiple titles, which is really interesting because maybe one title is developed in Helsinki and the other one's developed in Montreal and the other one's developed in San Francisco. So there's a lot of, yeah, and that might be one community manager working with all those teams. So there's the right word, I guess, would be compartments to your job. There's, well, this is the area that I fill into, and one of the things that I felt I one of the things that I think helped me understand how I functioned at Ubisoft was understanding that, and I don't want to use box because people look at that as like some terrible term, but where I fit into that structure, and making sure that I was going end to end in that role that I was filling, because I'm a little scatterbrained, and so making sure that I'm completing my responsibility end to end before I worry about anything outside of those parameters, and understanding that there are all these different people all functioning as one. Every gear in the machine has to be turning in the same tune, otherwise things are going to go wrong. And that was really kind of how Ubisoft functioned. We have different teams: PR, marketing, com dev, the development team, on and on and on and on, all turning toward the same goal, right?
Hmm.
When you get into a small studio like Gun, for instance, Gun is fractional, I mean microscopic, compared to Ubisoft as far as the amount of people employed at Gun. And we all wear a ton of different hats. I mean, all right, Layers of Fear 2 was a game we launched while I worked at Gun. Not only was I working com dev and working with the community on that, I mean, I built the wooden stage that our robot mannequins stood on at PAX East, and I helped organize events, and I booked like, you do a little bit of everything there. There's no, like, there are no, no column that you fit into in the greater well-oiled machine. In a smaller studio, you got a lot of people wearing a lot of different hats, and everybody's making it work. And you guys are kind of gutting through some really crazy things. And so there's a different, rhythm to it.
Hmm.
One thing I will say about huge studios is you get to work on some of the biggest, craziest things. Um, in my time at Ubisoft, I mean, we did crazy 24-hour charity drives and the Six Invitational on Rainbow Six. And, I mean, everything like of those scales down to like just seeing an asset you made shared by the Assassin's Creed Twitter account. Those are all like massive, huge things that you get to be a part of. And so I wouldn't trade it for the world. The difference at Gun, the thing that I find most alluring about working at a smaller studio is being able to have that crazy variety where, one day someone will come up to you and just say, what do you know about merchandise? And you're like, nothing. And they're like, well, you're going to learn today. And then you all just kind of set out and do the crazy thing until it works. And I like that too. So I don't know. I guess I think the way to look at it was I was at a point in my career where I was like, I know that community management team lead isn't for me. And that's what I was doing at Ubisoft. And so I was like, I'm ready to shake it up again and mix it up a little bit. And so Gun was perfect at the time, because I knew that when I went into Gun, I knew I was going to get curveballs, you know what I mean? That I wasn't seeing anymore. So
I just realized something. Is it right when I look at the community manager's, let's say, Twitter page, right, and what he's posting there, that this is just a small amount of information we actually see what he's putting out there? Because he probably puts out information like what he's working on, like information he wants to get out there on so many different other channels, which we don't see. So we only see the amount of work he does on his personal account, which is just maybe a small fracture.
yeah. I'm of the opinion that when it comes to community, I try to separate my personal account from the work stuff. There's a lot of opinions on this. The way I look at it, anything I do in a community management capacity goes through our brand channels first. That's how it should always be. That's where the scoop is. That's where the news is. That's where everything is. I am lucky to have a moderately decent size following on my personals, but that's because of what I do for a living. And so I don't want to ever scoop on my brands. So what you end up seeing is, honestly, I had a community manager who was upset with me. I mean, a community member who was upset with me, say that I literally don't do anything at Gun. And I was like, that's just because I'm not like you. If you're looking at my Twitter account going, look, this guy doesn't do anything, you're looking at the wrong Twitter account. So I think everybody has like a little bit of a different approach to how they handle these things. And I think that seeing it on their personal or seeing a fraction of it on their personal, that's ultimately not really, I don't think that's an indicator of anything. If anything, I'll post it to the official brands and then share from mine, or, so you're not, I don't, community management, in my opinion, isn't about signing your name like Matthew Zepp did this,
Yeah.
it's the brand. And my goal is to get as many eyes over to the Fear the Gun channel or the Friday the 13th channel or the Division or Rainbow or whatever you're working on. So
I think your cat wants to leave the room.
yeah, he's upset. That's Jack. He is very upset. This is like his 8th podcast episode now. So hang on a sec.
I was wondering if I have a cat suddenly, but I don't.
I heard it earlier and I was like, man, I guess the cat's real loud over there. I didn't realize he was right behind me until like a couple of minutes ago. And I was like, how do I like casually, like, I'm not slick enough to just grab the phone and text my wife and be like, let the cat in,
Can't you just open the door?
I mean, then I have to break from I thought that would be much worse if I
No, don't worry. I mean,
he's meowing at the door she's in, so she'll pop the door open. Watch, and you'll just see the door open. You might get a peek of Moxie, my 4-year-old daughter. She's a lunatic, and she'll, as soon as that door opens, she's probably going to try to bolt. But
oh yeah, okay, then she. I understand that actually.
yeah,
Very good.
so how long have you guys been hearing Jack the cat? That's awesome.
I think I heard him now for like 10, 15 minutes. I don't know.
Oh, all right.
Don't
The
worry.
whole time I was sitting here, I was like, Mizzi's cat's loud.
It's not my cat. And I don't have a cat, unfortunately. I wish. I'm not allowed to. Here, your Screamer actually had 2 questions. Screamer, I didn't forget about you. I saw your questions, but I didn't want to, I didn't want to interfere on our conversation we had actually. So he asked like, "Hey Matt, how has being a community manager changed with COVID? Has it at all?" That was actually a question I had as well. Like, did COVID affect your work? Um,
You know, it did and it didn't. I think that it really depends on your mindset toward development, and how these things work. There's a lot of teams that are like totally remote and they do all this stuff remote. And those folks, I'm envious of them because I'm not that way. I personally, I feel like I struggle with remote work. And I mean, I think it's just down to everybody's a little different,
mhm.
but like, for instance, are you the kind of person that will jump on the internal messaging system to ask someone a question who's a couple of desks away, or do you get up and walk over there? Those two types of people, you know what I mean? And there's the type of
Who are
person
you?
who I'm the walk over to the desk person, which is why I struggle with remote, because I'm like, I can't just go over and be like, hey, so Dan, what are we doing about, and like, I struggle with that. And, so other folks, they're the type who they're like, well, I'm in the zone, I'm doing my thing, so I will just message them, and yeah. So I don't think it's changed it, because to be completely honest, I think we all kind of know going in that, this is how things are going to function now. So I don't know. I don't know that I would say that anything has suffered because of it, but yeah, it's changed it in the respect that, it's a less like off the cuff kind of communal thing. There's a lot less of those, quick brainstorming sessions where everybody kind of weighs in, and you find yourself being a little more laser targeted. Whereas, maybe I'm trying to think of a good example, but maybe, for instance, in the past, if there was an issue that came up that I wanted to discuss with production, I would pull in everybody. I'd be like, yeah, anybody who touches production, come on in, let's talk about this real quick. And we'd have a chat, or we'd have a chat at the coffee pot. You know what I mean? And we would all kind of throw some things around and get to an end. Now it's more like I go straight to like one or two folks and I get their answer, and maybe we loop other people. It's just different process, really, so it has and it hasn't. I don't think that, speaking in terms strictly of community, I don't think it's suffered, but it has changed. Development, on the other hand, definitely has been a struggle. A lot of things. Our CEO was just talking about one of the main areas was mocap, and trying to record mocap in a mocap studio that's dealing with COVID regulations, where there's just everything slows down to like a much different pace because of all these precautions and things. So has it ruined it? No. Has it slowed it down? Of course, so.
How about the gamers, like the other side? Do you think something has changed from that side? Did you feel anything like got it
They're
more?
playing a lot more.
They're
Yeah.
playing a lot more, yes.
Oh yeah. They're spending a hell of a lot more time in game, which we appreciate. Absolutely. But that leads to more reports, more player reports, more balance reports, more bug reports. And honestly, it does kind of change community management in the respect that, they're more active on the channels too,
So that's actually a good thing for you.
Yeah.
Speaking of reports, is there something like, do you have issues with reports, or can we be like, as gamers, speaking as gamers, when we giving you a report of something is not working?
I'm going to say this. I love gamers, but generally your bug reports are terrible, guys. Just
Why?
like if you only gave me two choices right now, bug reports from the community are perfect or bug reports from the community are terrible, I'm leaning terrible all day, because they're just usually incomplete, guys. Most bug reports are, I experienced a bug in your game and fix it. And you're like, what platform are you on? Where are you located? You know what I mean? Like, what DLC do you have? Like, there's so many variables to it that, yeah, exactly. Actually, Screamer brings up one that's a real life experience. Okay. On the Division, I found another door in the Division that didn't work. And you're like, there's a ton of doors in the Division. Which one doesn't work? Like, you can't do that to me, man. And then they'll say something like, you never answered my bug report. And it's like, because it wasn't a bug report. It was like, I don't, it's just crazy. I went to a restaurant today and the food was terrible. Yeah. Where was it? In America. Like, that doesn't help, I think that it's, all jokes aside, I think that it's because I think on the development side of things, we can facilitate better bug reports by working on how we collect that information. And I think that that's something that we talk a lot about what community managers do. That's something that community managers talk about in early and pre-development and early stages of development. You talk about, well, how are we going to collect player feedback? How are we going to collect bug reports? How do we make that simpler? If there's a button that you click that to submit a report, how do we like pre-fill as many of those areas as possible so that they provide the information with as little impact to them as possible? Because I understand, I make jokes about it, but I understand you're in the middle of playing a game. You come across something, maybe you sling a bug out, a bug report out, and you just throw the info in there and you want to get back to your friends and play the game. So I get how they end up being kind of thin, you know what I mean? Like it's a nature of you wanting to get back in the game and play with your friends. You know what I mean? Like I get that. So I think that on the development side of things, there's things that we can be doing to facilitate better bug reports too. And it's, again, streamlining that process. How do we make that easier on players? How do we, instead of giving them a box that they type in, how do we give them like 8 different options in a drop down so that they can just click the one that applies and then the next one, click the one that applies, so that we get
So
better
they have to
info.
go through.
Yeah. And we get the complete story from them in as low impact to them as possible.
Speaking of which, in your experience, because I mean, you have a couple of years now in the industry, is there anything which comes into your mind you think you would have as a community manager, but you don't, like tools or anything you
Yeah.
always thought you would have, but you just don't?
Well, working at Ubisoft, again, we talked a few times about the difference between big studios and small ones. Working at Ubisoft, you have access to all the cool tools, all the cool, reporting tools and the this jazzy content management tool and that, and all these crazy things. And then you get into Indie and they're like, yeah, we don't have any of that stuff. So, no, I don't think that there's anything, having been on both sides of that, I don't think that there's anything that I thought we would have by now or anything like that. I'm constantly impressed by teams that do cool things with integrations and cool things with, some of that stuff that you see and you're just like, how did that, Warframe was one that constantly amused me with what they would do with some of their stuff. I think that in the shining heyday of PUBG, I think they did a lot of cool things with creators that were inspiring. I think there's a lot that we can all be learning from each other. And I think there's a lot that we can be thinking about. I think that the biggest thing, and again, I mean, who the hell am I really? You know what I mean? Like, I'm not trying to sound like I'm some big deal or anything, but I think that all of us in community, what we could really be doing is pushing to find ways to kind of change things, to try to reinvent the way we approach things and try to, again, streamline things, make better use of gamers' time in game, make better use of, working to create and help create an end product that is lower impact, less stressful, like, meet them in the middle there. And we may see, because again, the bottom line, in my opinion, on community management is, well, community development too, is you want to, you want to cultivate, I always say the word healthy, a healthy and happy community, because healthy communities, are free of toxicity and things like that. Happy communities can still have levels of toxicity in there. So healthy and happy communities, right? And what makes a healthy and happy community more than like just having a good gaming experience? So, getting community management back to a player experience mindset, it's always tied together. They're always kind of siblings in this business, player experience, community management. But sometimes it feels like they drift a little further apart, and pulling them back together again through some new and interesting means. I think there's something to that.
I was just thinking about the fact, if you look to the big titles, like any shooter game, and you have the possibility of creating clans, platoons, communities, whatever you call them. And they are important, right? They're important for community managers. They're important for the game, because they're building communities, your community. But do you think, as a community manager, especially if you look at the toxicity which is going around, it would help
like if there's more connection between actually the studios, the community managers, the community departments, and the communities which got built by certain people. Because I mean, one person starts a platoon, right? And
Mhm.
then they are building up, and some are really like really professional in a way, they have their Discord, they have their leaders, they have their teams whatsoever, and some just play together, which is fine. My question was more like, do you think there should be more connection between you basically and the gamers for that, so they can work together and maybe create events, which are for positive gaming,
Sure. I honestly, you're preaching to the choir on this, because that type of activity, that type of initiative is why I'm even a community manager or community developer, I guess. I forget my own job title a lot. You'll bear with me. I'm getting old, but whatever I do in community now, yeah, that's why I do it, because that's where I started, those community driven initiatives. And I absolutely think that they should have access if they're functioning in a way that is helping cultivate that healthy and happy community. They should have a level of access. Now they need to also use that level of access, which is a whole other topic. But
Yeah.
yes, I absolutely agree they should be working with them. And I think that Ubisoft is another great example of how those subdivisions of communities can work with the team more closely through. I mean, Ubisoft is, they have their workshop game like to a science at this point. They do wonderful workshops. I got to be a part of a few of them, both as a player and as a community manager, and I got to see how they all function and run. And I think that there's a lot of really great stuff there. I think that they do a lot of really cool stuff there. I think that those subgroups of communities, they have their spot, and as long as they're participating and they're a part of bringing, that end goal of a healthy and happy community out, absolutely they deserve a little bit more access to somebody like myself. And I think that they most often get it, to be fair. I think it's rare that you see a thriving pocket of a community not catch the eye of a community manager, because it's impossible for us not to see that kind of a thing. I think that where it gets tricky is, again, there's going to be a level of balancing their interests or feedback or wants against the greater community, and trying to make sure, because, for instance, we had a group of competitive players on Friday the 13th, and they kind of felt that the game should go a certain direction, while like the general public, average Joe gamers, they felt it should go in another direction. And so you can't alienate one group to favor the other. But I do think that, lending them your ear is important. I think you'd be hard pressed to find a community manager or developer that said, yeah, no, no, they're
Yeah.
good. You know what I mean? I think it's,
Listening, appreciation, I guess, but no judgment.
yeah.
hmm Um, I think we had a couple of other questions. Let me go in there. We had the COVID we had. What is the feedback from your community you are looking for, and not just related to bug reports? Or better put, how can the gamer help you? That is a good question. Who asked that?
I like
Leah?
that. Yeah. And, one of the things I feel strongly is, in any community situation, your community manager, I get why communities sometimes get frustrated with their community managers, right? I understand it. That's the representative, right? So if you're frustrated with a game, which, I mean, let's be honest, I get frustrated with video games too, and I work in community. So it's not like it's some terrible thing to be frustrated and critical of a game. Being critical of the video game is a good thing. But you have to remember something. The community manager is literally your representative to the development team. It goes back to that easy sentence I said earlier, where, the voice of the players to the development team. Now, you want to provide that voice. You want to provide your representative with all the information possible for them to make the case for you, right? So suppose you're playing our game Friday the 13th, right? And your feedback is all kinds of detailed feedback about balancing the game and all that. And you just kind of screaming at me and then disappear, and I can't get that info from you. If I understand your point and I'm in line with you, I can then go speak on your behalf. if I don't understand your point, I need more from you. I need to be equipped with the correct information to make the case for you. You know, essentially,
Gotcha.
I'm the one who's going to go and represent you to the team and say, this is a problem that we need to take a look at. And this is what we should consider doing, and blah, 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 blah. If I don't have all of those details, I can't make as good of a fight for that as I can if I'm equipped with all of the information. So basically, we have to work together. And yes, I see TrustedBeard said better to work with them than against them. Definitely. That is basically my long way of saying the end result is getting the game to a spot where you're happy with it. That's my end goal as well. Let's work together to get there. So you want to be thorough. You want to include all the information. I mean, TrustedBeard said, never mind just bug reports. So I'm not really going to touch on that. You know, there's basics there like region and platform and things like that, but I'm not going to go too far down that rabbit hole because he said or Beard said they wanted to talk more about, you know, in general. I would say just equip the community manager with all of your information as much as possible. If it's a balancing thing, talk about where you're witnessing the issues, what what kind of, how you're feeling that. And
Sorry.
yeah.
Sorry, I'm laughing. No, I'm just laughing. I prepared so many questions, and I think I asked 3 of my questions. You guys, you're amazing.
Are they beating you to it? Is that what's going on?
Yeah. That's one question after the other, and they're really good. So I have to go for it.
Well, like I said, I think the shorter answer to kind of corral myself on this one, TrustedBeard, is just provide all the details you can, honestly, and try to recognize your frustration and be frustrated and critical by all means. Community managers, we expect you to be frustrated at times. It's not like we want you to always be sweet to us, but just try to recognize that and don't let that get in the way of making your point. Because a lot of times I think a lot of people have a really great point to make, but they're just not at the right mindset yet to make it without letting their frustrations cloud it. And it turns too much into something that's muddier and the community manager can't work with as well. So I hope that makes sense.
I mean, sometimes, I think it is like that. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I think sometimes you want to change as well. And you're probably glad if somebody is bringing that from the community. So you actually have a reason to bring it on, because I mean, at the end, like you said, it's a crucial thing. You're staying between the gamers and the game developers, and you have to work, your way through.
Yep.
So yeah, I mean, if we all react with dignity and respect,
Sure,
it's totally fine.
And like I said, be pissed. Hey, I get mad at games too. Just make sure. And I'm not saying don't be so pissed that you say mean things to me. Never mind mean things or anything like that. Just don't let it get in the way of your point, because nothing's worse than when you're so angry about a thing that you're not making the best point you can. It's not, so it's a disservice to yourself, really, because you're just kind of yelling and it's getting in the way of what you're trying to say.
I have a personal question in between, and then I get to your question, because it's a great question. But I have to ask, I kind of want to ask that actually at the beginning, when Dimitri said, I think it doesn't matter really, but we talked about, you said many people have the first 5 years as a community manager, you get a burnout, right? So what would you say to a young community manager? How can they prevent a burnout? And I think this is what we all can use, actually, that information, like as content creators, as leaders, we all are these stress moments. So do you do something personally? I don't know, meditation, whatever it is. Do you have a routine?
Well, as far as things like that, I try to make sure that, this sounds silly, but I try to make sure that my job and the thinking about my job and thinking about what I have to do, what I am doing, what's going on, doesn't become too all encompassing. I'm the guy who I'll run with any hobby that interests me for like 5 minutes. So it's like, you need that though. You need that time outside of it, because for a long time, my hobby was playing video games. And so now, too often you find yourself in these positions. And I don't want to say anything bad about the Division, right? I loved my time on the Division, but I also loved playing the Division. So at the time, I was the community manager for the Division. I was live streaming the Division for our official brand channels. And then I was going home and playing the Division at night. And it just was
A little bit too
as
much, right?
yeah, as much as the people I was playing the division with always tried to keep a boundary about, well, he's not working right now. You still end up talking about the things and, or you come across something and you jot it down because you're like, I got to let the team know about that. And so it just started to feel like too much, and last stand. Yes, last stand. So, knowing your boundary really is important. And honestly, knowing your boundaries is just the best life advice you could give anybody because it applies to everything. Knowing your boundaries with the community, knowing where, hey, that's not all right. Like you need to have a civil discussion with me. I'll come back to this when you can be civil, or knowing those lines, is honestly, in my opinion, some of the best advice you can give somebody, to just know your boundaries. And if you're in an environment, if you're a new community manager or a content creator and you're in an environment where somebody's making or insinuating that you are weak for knowing your boundaries, be cautious, because that's a toxic mindset. There's this silly thing that happens. It's very kind of tied to like this crunch culture, this, work yourself crazy culture of, I don't want to speak up and say that I'm hitting a boundary of mine because that'll make me look weak or inferior. Right. I mean, we've all been there where, you know, if you're helping your friend move and your buddy's carrying 5 boxes and you can only carry 3, you know what I mean? You have that moment of, oh, I'm like not doing the same. I'm not pulling my weight, that type of a feeling.
I
Anybody
don't have
who's,
that.
you don't have that at all. I
Not with
envy you.
boxes.
No, not with boxes. Okay. But there's that
I get the
idea.
point.
Yeah. When I was a new community manager, I was like,
Mm,
when things would get too much, I would be like, I can't tell anybody at the office about this, because if I tell somebody, they're going to say, oh, what's your problem? You can't deal with what I dealt with as a community manager, and I'm going to look inferior. And I had all this anxiety about looking like I couldn't hack it or something. And that was in my own head. Anybody that'll make you feel that way, I would be super cautious of, but I would hope that you're surrounded by people that will appreciate you knowing your boundaries, so you don't end up burnt out, but that's the most important thing, knowing your boundaries and knowing to balance your hobbies and get your time away from it, because community, I mean, socials never stop. That
just
anybody,
reminds me it just reminds me of how kids are. Kids have this, like, he can do this, so I want to do this, or I can do this. So I think it's something actually we really need to learn in life, like over
yeah.
time. It's something you bring with you. And this pressure of somebody's doing this, so I have to do this, right? Or
And
I should be able to do this.
there's this weird high school thing to it. In high school, like when you're a freshman, you get picked on by seniors. And then when you're a senior, you have these seniors that are like, oh, I'm going to pick on freshmen because I got picked on. And it's like, why does that make any sense? You know what I mean? Like that, didn't that suck? You got picked on. Didn't that suck? Like, why would you willingly do that to someone else? Like, what's the matter with you? But we do. And there's something about that too. I've seen a few leads or bosses in the community space that their answer when you say, man, I'm dealing with this and it's really kind of getting to me, and it's like, you should have seen when I was on such and such a game. And it's like, that's not helpful to anybody. That's because we're all individuals and we all go through things differently and we all experience things differently. You telling, like, I don't know. It's like that friend where you're like, yeah, man, I'm having a really tough day. I stubbed my toe. And your friend goes, oh, you stubbed your toe. I broke my foot. And you're like, okay, so we're both in pain. Like, that doesn't help me at all. Like, why? I don't get why does that make sense right now? There's a few people I've come across that are like that. And it always makes me kind of shudder and recoil, because I'm like, that doesn't
Then you
help
don't
that
tell
community.
anything anymore. Also,
Yeah,
like, you stop
that's right.
communicating.
That's right. If you're direct manager, or one of your direct reports, if you're the manager and one of your direct reports comes to you and says they're going through something, and your answer is to tell them how bad you had it, you're really kind of terrible at what you do. You're not really helping that person at all. I hate to say it, but that's a hard line in the sand, man. So yeah, knowing your boundaries is a good thing. We're all individuals and we all experience things differently. And knowing when you're hitting that mark is very important, because if you don't look out for yourself, that burnout will catch you. And yeah.
Um, One more question related to this, actually. How do you deal with toxicity which is directly in front of you? Like, if somebody is attacking you in a way,
Like, because, okay, I give you an example. We had this actually last week in the podcast with the female gamers about female toxicity, and every time I hear this, like, just don't react, just don't let it influence you, whatever it is. And I mean, especially because, the experience now with Rainbow Six Siege, and there were a lot of female gamers, and you play in a very small squad of how many are in Rainbow Six Siege actually, guys? 5? I didn't play this game for so long. 5
Oh,
or 4-man
how
squad?
many?
4-man
Oh,
squad?
five.
5, right?
Five.
So you have a 5-man squad, so it's really small squad, so every communication is really important in such a game. And then you have toxicity going on against you, and they say like, well, just ignore it, just shut it down. And you can't. You
Yeah.
just can't, because you don't feel it that day, whatever, you had a bad day yourself.
Mhm.
And I think you, as a community manager, someday you probably had a bad day too. So what do you
Oh
do?
yeah.
Do you have like a system, just, I don't know, I go away from the
No,
computer?
honestly, I've dealt with enough of it where, don't get me wrong, there are times with everybody, but you know, eh, I'd like to think that I've dealt with it enough where, like, you kind of switch into autopilot, and every community manager has certain responses that they say, like, hey, let's keep it civil for the sake of everybody. Things like, we all have them that we fall back on. And part of that is not, it sounds a lot like it could just be complacency, and it's really not complacency. It comes from a place of, when you get so mad that you want to react like another angry person on the internet, the autopilot response is the best, because it's the thing that you can put out into the world without any emotion and letting your own emotions get involved. And so often I will dole out one of those. I will send hey, when you're a little more, mellow and calm, maybe we can have a civil discussion on this, that kind of a thing. When it comes to dealing with toxicity, though, that really gets you. Once it manages to unlock the emotional part of you, it's hard to put that back. And so that's why, honestly, having your go-to that you can kind of put out there and then shut the thing down is extremely helpful. I know that that's not always possible, but honestly, mute, block options, those kinds of things are vital, because then you can say, hey, I'm not trying to have some screaming match with you, so I'm just going to mute you, and that's that. And just take yourself out of it as best you can. But I mean, from a community management standpoint too, I also think that there's this misconception that, like, we're supposed to be saintly or something. Like,
Did you block a lot of people?
I block people all the time.
Mhm.
I have no time for that bullshit. Yeah.
Yeah.
I,
Yeah,
I
of
mean,
course.
if you're an adult and you can't handle talking to someone like another adult, or worse, if you're under the impression that my job is to deal with abuse from you
Hmm.
and just take it and have a smile on my face, then you're misunderstanding my role in this
Hmm.
relationship. So
Yeah.
I'll block you. I don't. You can talk to me like a human being. It's not difficult. I do it to a lot of people all day long. You know what I mean? Like,
Hmm.
so.
Do you
I,
remember? Do you remember still the first death threat?
Oh yeah, somebody sent me a picture of my car in the driveway of my house. So they were outside my house, and that freaked me out because I had a newborn kid. So
Oh yeah, that
yeah,
would freak me totally out.
I got
Did you
calls on
move?
my. No, we did. Well, we did, but not immediately. I got calls on my cell phone. I've gotten, weird emails, signed up for things. I've gotten DMs of every type, death threats on me, death threats on my wife, my kid, all of that, like over DMs and things. Um, luckily we're getting to a point where you can report these things to your, like, local FBI office, or your nearest FBI office, and they take it more seriously than they did years ago. So at least there's that, and I think nothing puts a keyboard warrior in check quite as much as, like, the FBI going to their house and being like, so we heard you want to kill this community manager. Like, I really think that cuts the keyboard warrior down. So.
You must have a really supportive wife, to be honest.
Oh my,
I mean, I'm just saying, like, from the
yes.
perspective of being a gamer,
Mhm.
and then working in that field with that kind of pressure. Like, damn, she must be an amazing
Yeah.
lady.
She really is. Yeah, 100%. She really is. And, you know, she's an amazing mom, and she's all the support I need to do the things I do. I couldn't do all this without her. So, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
But, you know, and not only is she an amazing support structure, but I mean, you know, there's gotta be, uh, I don't know, man, there's a lot to that, to think that people are, talking that way about you and your family. And there's my wife going like, well, why am I involved in it? You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
So, to willingly take that on just because, you know, she thinks I'm all right, you know, that's pretty good.
Lucky.
Yeah, I'm very lucky. I know it. I know it.
Let's go back to Deadeye's question before I forget it. Wait, I need to scroll up here quick. What kind of resources are available to community managers as far as advertising? Example, would you as a community manager be able to help advertise that Friday the 13th community from official game channels?
How do you mean you mean advertising like a fan run community? Is that what their question? Oh, I see their question right there. Actually, let's see. To help advertise that Friday the 13th competitive community from official game channels.
Is there a
Oh,
competitive
I get what
community?
you mean. You're referring back to the competitive community I brought up earlier. I understand. I'm sorry. I misheard that. I apologize, Ms. So yeah, absolutely. You know, honestly, we do a lot of, you know, kind of weeding out and searching for those groups that are providing like a good health. Again, it goes back to creating a healthy and happy community.
Mm-hmm.
So, you know, you want to do your due diligence and make sure that you're not like using the brand channel to direct people to some toxic, nasty, God only knows what, you know, but yeah, you know, as a community manager, you have to be tapped into that stuff. It actually goes back to, what we were talking about earlier with, you know, competitive communities and surfacing their information to the development team and things like that.
Mm-hmm.
By the same note, the best way to do that is to exist in those communities as well and understand their vibe, their situation, what they're doing with their communities and all of that. And if that's something that you want to support, then by all means, we have the means to go and share it from the official channels. I think that it's never as simple, because I know that this comes up a lot. I've seen a lot of community members express like frustration, like, I don't feel like I ever get posted by the game account, and totally valid feelings and things like that. But you have to recognize too that sometimes it just doesn't line up with what's going on. Like,
Mm-hmm.
for instance, not too long ago, we had some DDoS attacks happening on Friday the 13th. And so during that time, no, I wasn't going to share like, hypothetically, I don't have anything, you know, that actually came up during that time, but hypothetically a competition or an event like that, I'm not going to go and share that out then, because right then I know that our community is literally staring at that account, waiting to hear when they can get back online. And that's what they're kind of laser focused on. And that's what they want to know about. So, you know, as a community manager, you have to try to balance that, because you have the potential to, you know, I don't know, share a cosplay, and then the first 20 replies are, stop sharing cosplay, what's going on with the servers? You know what I mean? And so like you wield the brand account, you know, carefully, because you can send potentially frustrated players at somebody who has nothing to do with, you know, a DDoS attack. You know what I mean? So like there's all these other things that go in. It's never as simple as like your personal Twitter account. On your personal Twitter account, you see something cool and you go, screw it, retweet. You know what I mean? And you just hit the button.
Mm-hmm.
Never is it that simple on a brand account. There's 90 million other things going on, you know? And yeah, sometimes those are things that are clear to the community and they understand. And sometimes those are things that the community doesn't quite realize. But trust me, it's never just a community manager going, I could hit the button, but I'm like, I don't feel like it. You know what I mean? Like, that's not how that goes. So,
Mm-hmm.
but yeah,
Can you give me
yes, we
can you
do
give me a
have that.
story of the brand account, whatever story comes up to your mind, and dynamics which going wrong and how to handle that?
One that I really like is we had somebody share a picture of them. There's two actually. We had a content creator share like a GIF of them. Um, you know, I believe they had like a machete and a Jason mask, and they were going to go live with Friday the 13th, and they said something about right, and you know, the Jason sound, but they spelled it with the CHs, right, and the AHs, and I shared it because I was like, this person, they created this whole asset and everything else to go along with their Friday the 13th play session. I know this content creator is going to have a really fun and upbeat and good time kind of live stream. I want to share this to the community, and hopefully they'll go and hang out and enjoy the stream. The community launched on it, and they were just, oh, it's key ma ma ma, which is true. That's accurate. It's not chi, like, but it's such a tiny gatekeepery thing to be so worried about. It is key ma ma ma. It's not ch, but you missed everything else in there. And so they all launched onto it, and kind of, started letting this streamer have it. And the person didn't do anything other than just try to get into a live stream and not know the like, the 100% canonical term or whatever,
Mhm.
And so I responded from the brand account, and I said that, people can kind of enjoy Friday the 13th however they want. I said something to the effect of, the horror community needs more welcome wagons and less gatekeepers. And people kind of latched on to that sentiment. So I think the moral of that one is that, being behind that brand account, again, you wield all of this potential for positivity or negativity. And I think that being behind, there's a lot of power behind that brand account because all those people
Mhm.
are there for it. And so you can take those opportunities to do something that, can kind of, I mean, it sounds so simple that I'm struggling with my words, because basically it goes back to the healthy community thing. Do you want people to be gatekeepery and weird and attacking each other over some typos or some,
Please don't.
saying? And yeah, exactly. Do you want that, or do you want everybody just kind of getting along and enjoying their mutual love of Friday the 13th? Okay. So you can kind of set that tone, and you can set that pace with that brand account, because you have hundreds of thousands of eyeballs watching. So I think that was one of the that's a good example of taking the power that brand account carries and using it to do something nice,
Yeah, it's interesting. It's I don't want to put out names here, but there was a story a week ago, when a brand account reposted something, of a fan account, and it ended up that a few big influencers were hitting on this fan account, and it was nothing, it was really nothing big. But then again, it ended up that this fan account actually shut down because they got tons of toxic messages,
Yeah.
because the influencers and the brand account jumped onto that, and it was nothing.
Yeah.
It was about nothing.
Yeah.
And it was very sad. And I think many times influencers forget how much power they have, how much influence they actually have. And I think, being influencers, being content creators, comes with responsibility. And you have to live. You have to, well, you have to think about every word you say, right?
Mhm.
And it's very difficult. Speaking of influencers and content creators, how do you? I mean, you guys work with content creators and influencers, right? So
Yeah.
how do you? What are your criteria for that? How do you pick them? Does it have to be like? Do they have to be big? Do you pick small and big? What is it?
I have a lot of kind of, I guess, philosophies on this that I've taken. I'm not reinventing any wheels here. I just, have taken some different approaches from different folks that have helped, train me in community, and things that I've seen, takeaways that I've seen. I honestly owe a lot of it to Ubisoft, because there I got to be a part of brands of all different sizes and see how they worked with creators and see what worked and what didn't. I mean, you know, I love working in indies and I love where I'm at Gun, but there is a level of experience that comes from being in a building that puts out games of various different sizes, so I got to see how they all worked with creators differently. And
Oh, wait, oh, we are back. We were gone. Sorry.
oh no. Okay. So, taking that understanding from all of those different brands and being able to, kind of incorporate that into one plan for Gun. The way I look at things is, I kind of want to I want to make sure that we're addressing every level of creator. I want to be able to bring the smaller creators in and get them, if they're kind of like just getting the ball rolling with their communities, but they have a great vibe and they have cool things going on. I want to try to do what I can to support them. And I want Gun to do what they can to support them. The folks in the middle that are just, making that turn, I definitely want to make sure that we're supporting them as best we can. And of course, the folks at the top of their game are if they're interested in our stuff, we want to make sure we're supporting them as well. So how do you balance that all out? Well, number one, they have to be genuinely interested in your content, so I don't usually approach them. I don't usually try to be the one to reach out to them because I don't want them to feel like it's forced. Like, for instance, if you reach out to a smaller creator, right?
Mhm.
Somebody with a smaller following and all that, and you say, I work for this game. Would you want to play a copy on your stream? There's that dynamic of, holy shit, somebody from the game industry just reached out to me. I'm going to play the game. I'm going to make sure I play it. You know what I mean? It's not as genuine. When you reach out to a bigger creator, you can kind of find yourself doing the same thing. So to me, the first thing is interest in what we do, and at Gun, it's horror. So are you, interested in horror? Are you interested in multiplayer? These kinds of things. That's the first thing. And then the second thing is I maintain a really clear cut tiering for creators. I try to make sure that creators of different sizes and all of that fall into these different areas of my influencer relation sheet. And that means there's no like, kind of gross assessment that I got to do for them. They fall into these buckets. It's all planned out in a sheet. And then I throw everything I can within that tier at them, and whatever they want to make use of, they do. So,
Mhm.
and what I mean by that by tier is it's as simple as,
Well, you're talking right now about the one-way road. So you reaching out to them. Um, do you have any story in mind where a content creator reached out to you and impressed you in a way, and that's why you worked with them, even though they maybe
oh,
didn't fill the spectrum?
absolutely. We have people approach us all the time. I mean, even right now, it's interesting. Friday the 13th's been out for like 4 years, and we have people going, "Can I get a review code of Friday the 13th?" And it's like, it's a little late for a review, but really, it's just a channel trying to get going. But yeah, I absolutely have had people reach out, and there goes my daughter. I absolutely have had people reach out and just impress us. It can be as simple as a conversation. They show that they're really, enthusiastic about horror and
Mhm.
multiplayer games, or maybe you know, they're just getting into going live, but they play Friday the 13th and they want to give away some game codes. So they're reaching out because they're like, I already own it. I already love it. But, I want to give away some game codes. I think that as much as decks and like promotion, showing your numbers and your concurrence and all of that can be meaningful and can be worth it, I think there's other ways to achieve the same thing. And I think that it comes from a place of, number one, interest in the actual product, not just interest in getting your hands on a code early, right?
Mhm.
Because I mean, everybody knows that live streamer starting out who's like, I just want access to any free code I can. I don't care if it's a Hello Kitty game and I play shooters. You know what I mean? They just want all the codes, and that's not genuine. So I guess, you know, genuine interest in the items that company is putting out, the games that company's putting out is number one, because if you're genuinely interested in it, you're going to give a genuine review and you're going to give your genuine feelings about it. Even if they're negative, if you're a horror fan, you're going to try that horror game. So,
Yeah.
that kind of thing first. And second of all, the number two thing I want to hear from a creator looking for codes or looking to develop a working relationship is, first and foremost, what's your plan? So like, suppose you come to me and you go, I love horror so much. I really want to work with Gun because I'm just such a huge fan of horror. I don't want to request things of you. What are your thoughts? What are you looking to
What are you
do? Are you
putting on
going
the
to do?
table? Where's your
Yeah, well,
creativity?
right. Are you going to just stream the game? Because that's totally okay. But are you going to stream it and just have your viewers watch you stream it? Are you going to run an event? Are you going to like stream with your community? Are you going to,
Hmm.
have viewers from chat join you? What are you doing with the
What is
code?
special
Not
about you?
just, I mean, have an idea. you know, because anybody can write an email and say, I want a game code so I can play it. You know what I mean? Like that's, I don't want to say it's low effort, but it kind of is low effort, you know. But if you come to me and you say, look, I stream a horror game every Friday. This Friday, I want to do Friday the 13th, and I'm going to take my viewers from chat and pull them into the lobby with me. And we're going to run private lobbies with those cool custom private lobby toggles. And we're going to do silly things and give away some prizes. It'd be great if I could have a code and some codes for prizes. I'm going to send you 10 codes because that's a really cool, fun idea. And I want your community to enjoy that stream, and I want your community to enjoy the game and enjoy that feature in our game. So yeah, I'm gonna send you some stuff. But if you come to me and you go, I was thinking I might stream it, you know, like that's,
I mean, isn't the thing also like marketing wise that I don't know if you think that way, but isn't like every content which will be produced is content which you can use? Because they can post it on their Twitter, for example, you know, and you can repost it. So it's kind of marketing for you as well. So the better the ideas they bring, the more entertainment.
And also that's why it's important that they're genuine, because you want to share it, and you don't want to share some guy going, yeah, I don't know what this game's all about. I'm not really, you know, you want somebody who's at least going to give even if it's a critical one, at least give an informed critique, or, you know, enjoy themselves or something, you know?
Yeah, that's really interesting. Totally makes sense. At least to me, it makes sense. Let me look quick into my questions, because I couldn't look into that as well, and I don't know if I missed anything here in chat. I missed one question actually. Before I forget it again, there was at the very beginning another question of your friend here. He said, "I just want to know how the heck you keep track of what you can and cannot tell the community, like future releases, updates, etc." Screamer asked that.
Extreme paranoia, Screamer. I live in a constant state of extreme paranoia that I'm going to say the wrong thing.
There's your answer. That was the shortest answer he brings tonight.
Yeah, because it's true. I mean, it's true. You know, at all points, you're hearing things. You're talking about things, and some of it can be shared, some of it can't. And so you just have this constant state of like, got to make sure I don't spill the beans, you know. But it gets a little easier with time. When it comes to things that are like, I mean, when I say extreme paranoia, I mean as in unannounced items. But when it comes to things about balancing and stuff like that, I try to be, I think Screamer knows this from my time on The Division. I try to be an open book and give them where the development team's head is at that moment. So like, if it's a topic of balance, I try to say, well, look, here is what we're thinking, and we're going to watch the feedback, and this is what we're watching for, and we're going to see where things go. You know, I try to keep it as transparent and clear as possible when it comes to those kinds of things. It's never a concern there. The paranoia is more about like upcoming DLC or new games or whatever. But yes, that is a pretty short answer. I even made it longer and it was still short.
No, it's cool. It's all good. We have time. Can you tell me one thing you learned from communities which made you a better community manager?
Well, you know, honestly, I could probably talk about this one for a good long time. Mainly because all right, I've been picked on for this comment. I'm going to say this saying I'm going to use, but I genuinely believe it. The moment you feel like you've stopped learning things, you should find something else to do with your time. Before I got into community management, I was a carpenter. Straight out of high school, I got into carpentry, and I worked my way up to being a cabinet maker. And I was a cabinet maker in a shop, and I would always be working with different cabinet makers. And I always felt like I could learn from them, even when, this is going to sound rude, but even sometimes it was learning the wrong way to do something from them, but I was still learning from everyone around me. And I felt like, you know, that was something that I picked up in trades and I carried over to community. I feel like the minute you feel like you're not learning, Screamer said, Mr. Reality TV. Yes, I was on a reality TV show as a carpenter on HGTV at one point. Thanks for bringing that up, Screamer.
We will look that up.
Yeah. Oh, they already did. They found pictures of me working in, yeah. So yeah, I brought that over to the community because I felt like the moment you feel like you have nothing more to learn, then maybe you should think about, you know, moving to a different role, get to a different spot, never stop learning. Exactly true, Fergun. You know, it's, I feel like when I learned the most as a community manager, it was when I was a community management team lead, because I got to be in charge of this pocket of community managers that all had their own approach to community.
Mm-hmm.
And it was part of what made me want to get back into being an individual contributor, was seeing the way these folks did things and learning all this cool stuff. I mean, you can take one nugget from each of them and you've got all this new stuff in your arsenal. So you should always be learning from the folks around you. And again, honestly, sometimes it's learning how not to do things. I once worked with a cabinet maker who had, you know, I have 10 fingers, right? Never lost a finger as a cabinet maker. I have no shade on anybody who's lost a finger. Okay. But I've got all 10. This guy had 5 total on his 2 hands. I learned a lot of what not to do from him. Okay. So you should always be learning something from someone around you, even if it's a guy with lobster claws, because he's cut all his fingers off. So
Speaking of which, learning, is there,
I thought you were saying, speaking of which, lobster claws.
yeah, or losing fingers.
Yeah.
Is it like a habit you trained yourself, like you constantly trying to learn something new? I'm just asking because what I learned a lot, like the last 2 years for me, is that keeping a mindset, having a mindset of trying to learning something new, you know, keeps you also healthy. And helps you actually also in the job you actually are doing, because, you know, brain activity, stuff like that, you know. Do you have something right now, something new you learn? Do you even have the time?
Yeah, actually, when COVID hit, I just had less like human interaction and things like that. And so I was like, I need to be doing something more. Oh, I just hit my mic. Sorry. I need to be doing something more. So I've always wanted to get into photography. So I got myself a decent camera. It's the camera I'm using now. Well, actually, no, the first one was a lot less of a camera than this one. And I was like, let me test the waters with this and go out and snap some pictures and see if I can get into it. So I started doing that. And then I got really into it and I started trying to do more manual, get off of automatic modes and things like that. And then the more interest I had in it, then I was like, okay, I can commit some more, you know, funds and time to this and learn more and learn more and learn. I kicked off a podcast. I have a podcast called Radio for the Creeps, where I talk about horror movies and things. You know, when I say always be learning something, you know, you should always be learning in your role and your job, because you don't want to stagnate, right? But you can be doing that, as you said. I think you brought up an excellent point about keeping yourself healthy and keeping your brain active. That stimulus, you know, doing something new to stimulate your mind a little. And so, yeah, it's just something that, you know, again, you know, I feel that over the course of time, that life experience that you get from interacting, learning from a ton of different people, a ton of different things, that's all you have eventually. You know, I mean, I have a ton of good stories, right? I'm a kind of person where if we go out and get a beer, I have a ton of great stories. And part of that is just, you know, being out there and experiencing things. And so part of that is learning things. You know, right now I bought a new Jeep and I'm building it up to go off-roading, right? You might say, what does that have to do with this? Well, because I can't wait for it to be warm again, and I can throw that camera bag, the other hobby I recently got into the back of the Jeep that I've been working on, turning wrenches and learning some cool mechanic stuff on, and drive out to the middle of the woods and take some pictures that I can then share to my social media. And it all comes full circle. You know, it's all the things that you're interested in and you're doing.
And we are back to the big picture thing. You see?
It's just, you know, again, it's, you know, you can always be learning in your work. You can always be learning in your life. And I don't know, just taking all that stuff in, you'll walk away from it with a lot of great stories and some cool things that you can do, even if you can only kind of do them. Like, even if I, at a certain point in photography, I was like, that's enough for me. I just want to take pictures of my daughter. There's nothing wrong with that either. You know, you
and they're
learned a
beautiful,
little
by the way. I
something.
saw them on your social media. Now I know you took them.
Thank you. I appreciate that. They're trying very hard every day, like I said, you know, and, you know, actually Screamer brought up a funny point. He brought up the reality TV show. At the time I was just a carpenter, and, you know, I was doing some content creation already, but not like now. And, I learned so much there from being on the show. I learned so much about the way they would film, because I mean, the carpenters on those shows, they're always like they're always working right up to the last minute. So the camera crew is in there recording like the left side of the room while the carpenter is finishing work on the right side of the room. It's crazy how they do those things. There's wet paint, and I would like scurry out of the room and they would turn the camera around and show the other side of the room. And even that was an experience that like I walked away from learning so much about how those crews work and how that all functions. Some of it pays off now in the studio for our live streams at Gun. You know, it's just crazy the different things that you can learn if you're just kind of conscious of trying to soak up anything you can from somebody.
Fergan also said, like, you have to in this field because there's always a new platform or social media network launching, and you want to know if it's interesting for your community, et cetera, et cetera. And I think she's right. And also, like, I mean, connected also to the gaming industry as well. You know, it's like technology is changing so fast, and if you're not ready to go with it,
That's right.
and don't have the mindset, you know, to be willing to learn something new, then you definitely would stay behind, I guess, right?
Yeah.
And you can't do your job as good.
You know, when Twitter launches a new feature and everybody on Twitter kind of goes like, that's weird. Every community manager, you know, is looking at that new feature going, is this going to be popular now? Because if it is, we're going to, like, they launched fleets, right?
Yes.
And everybody was like,
I was like, no.
right. Everybody kind of was like, oh, these fleets, come on. Every community manager is sweating bullets. And they were like, should I learn how to make cool fleets? Is that going to be the next thing? You know, like, do I need to know how to make a fleet? You know, and you know, TikTok was the other last one. It was like, oh, okay, I guess we're got to figure out this.
And TikTok is really important, unfortunately, right?
Yep. You know, it stuck around. You would think it was, you know, at the time you saw it come up and you were like, okay, is this going to be another like fly by night, gone in a minute? It stuck around. It's done well. So I think brands, you know, they got to get on there.
Can you give us like a quick, like, how does a usual day for you look like as a community manager? Like from getting up, starting work, do you have like a routine going on, you know?
Sure.
Yeah. Tell me.
The baseline of it is opening up every channel under the sun and making sure you have them all active and open, and trying to catch up with now we have to be on the lookout for Clubhouse. Yes, exactly. That was the most recent one. I saw that the other day.
I'm
and
in
like,
Clubhouse
too. Come on.
I was looking in there. I gave up after 5 minutes, guys. It's driving me nuts.
I
still don't. I have no idea what that is. I was looking at it like, I can't. No, I can't. But it's interesting. But I can't.
I'm telling you, I think you're gonna see. I think you're gonna see the game industry make some usage out of Clubhouse. I'm worried because I got to learn a thing, but hey, that's what we're here for, right? And
yeah, I will look at that too. I mean, I saw actually at a friend how he was using it, and I saw very interesting.
Yeah.
How do you call them? Chat? No, how do you call them? Like
a town hall
meetings.
Chat. Yeah.
Whatever. And it is definitely worth it and interesting to look into that. But I'm overwhelmed already right now with Twitter and Instagram, to be honest. And TikTok, don't ask me about TikTok.
I could see Clubhouse. You know how I could see Clubhouse and games working well together? You get like a lead level designer in there to talk about maps in a shooter and get them sitting there talking and kind of running through some of the things that they do in the day-to-day, and people being able to just tune in and check that out and listen and learn. And I think that it can go along all of these things. All of these new and emerging social media things can be leveraged to break down a barrier of knowledge about, you know, between the two. I think that there's always that potential. Discord had that potential, you know, like you could do chat rooms in Discord where you could have somebody essentially doing like a live AMA thing. You know, all of these emerging kind of social media things have the potential to be leveraged for some really interesting stuff to kind of just break a barrier down between communities and developers. But it takes significant buy-in, and number one, it takes the platform to become, you know, kind of for the mainstream to latch onto it. So there will actually be users to see the content, right? And it requires you know, a lot of buy-in from a lot of people in the development team. But if you get that, I think you can do some really cool stuff with it.
Sorry. Oh. Dan and you, both for you, the question, do you see Clubhouse interesting for regular gamers or influencers, content creators as well? Because I was thinking about that, like, does it really matter to me? I was more personally interested, like, because I like actually to learn new stuff. So I would more use it right now for me, the person, and would look into, oh, this is interesting, I want to listen to that or this. But I wasn't thinking about using it as influencing somebody else, more like a listener. Um, but do you think this is Clubhouse is actually interesting for gamers, content creators, influencers?
If you're asking me, I think time will tell. And I think it's going to depend on, just like anything else, the creativity of the content that's presented on the platform. For instance, TikTok. TikTok grabbed a hold of everybody because people were able to do some extremely creative things on there in a short matter of time. And the videos are nice and short and bite-sized. You can get through them quick. And if you enjoy it, it's just really streamlined and easy. And it's kind of good for that, like, quick hit of content. Now, I don't know about you, but there are always some TikToks that are like, okay, you didn't put all that effort in, and the entire platform kind of crumbles around it. You know what I mean? Like, so again, I think it depends on the strength of the content, because some strong content on a platform can carry the platform. Weak content can crush it. And, I really think it's going to depend on how people use Clubhouse. I think right now it's kind of an oddity. Like, one of the things I hear a lot of is people are all like jumping into a Clubhouse chat with like some famous person who doesn't even know their mic is muted. And they all just kind of sit there and laugh about how the mic is muted the whole time. And then they all leave. That I don't think will really be something that has staying power and stands up. But yeah, it's going to be how there you go. Best utilize it to tell stories through content, and that strength of that content is really going to be what makes it stand up or not. I mean,
What is Clubhouse, by the way?
yeah.
Clubhouse is a new social media platform. Damn, I don't know if I can talk anymore. I think I need a tea. I'm still struggling with my cough, and the more I talk right now, the worse it gets.
Oh.
And I think I need to make myself a tea, and then I would be fine. But I don't want to break up and leave now the stream here, guys. So I try my best, just in case you're wondering. I'm sorry. It just gets worse because the more I speak, it gets worse. Clubhouse, like I said, just Google bloody. You can download it.
I don't think anybody here can fully explain Clubhouse to you either, because it's kind of new for all of us. But.
Exactly. And I think you can only get invited. So you have to open the app. And it will show you, though, I think maybe if you know people, and then they can refer you or something. So you get in. It's not like you can just install it and then go in. And I think this is actually also a good marketing strategy, what they did. They made it interesting. Like, you can't just make an account and go. You have to be referred.
Yeah, there's a little mystique there, right?
Mm-hmm. It's like a club you can go to, and you get booze, and normally it's not allowed to drink booze or something. I don't know. It's very interesting, definitely. You need more of that German moonshine, definitely. And I'm out. Well, maybe I have actually something little. I should get that quick.
Now you're talking.
All right.
I feel like we were talking about a different topic, and then I think I lost my train of thought. But
yeah, me too. Was my fault.
No, we started talking about Clubhouse, and I got super enthusiastic about Clubhouse.
Me too. I will look into that again now, because I kind of gave up. I actually installed it this week and looked into that, and then after 5 minutes I gave up again. But I definitely want to look into that again, especially because I'm a big fan of Gary Vaynerchuk. Do you know Gary Vaynerchuk?
I know of Gary Vaynerchuk.
Yeah. Of Gary, yeah. And it's like, yeah, everything he's basically referring, it's like, okay, I look into that. And yeah, I just like his stuff. Well, I have one more question. Give me some do's and don'ts as a community manager, especially because you said you wanted to have this podcast, for young community managers as well, and speak to them. Yeah. So give me some do's and don'ts, please.
I think I'm going to echo it again, simply because I really feel strongly about this. And I think it's the biggest thing is the knowing your boundaries. And I think that a big problem, if I can be so bold as to just state it outright, I think a big problem in community management with young community managers is that and this isn't any fault of their own, and it doesn't mean they're terrible or poor community managers or anything. I think one of the biggest problems is that they themselves don't fully understand the role. And so they're kind of, and when I say that, I don't mean that they're showing a shortcoming. I mean that they're putting up with a certain thing that's giving the community a certain impression, and those dynamics are awfully hard to shake off.
Mm-hmm.
If you come into the role and you establish yourself as a community manager, and you're taking a lot of things that are borderline that you shouldn't have to put up with, or you're kind of presenting a level of access to yourself, for instance. This is another angle. It's not always about toxicity or incoming comments or angry comments. Sometimes it's a level of access. Maybe you're answering on the brand account all hours of the night, all day on the weekends and things. You're setting a pace that they're going to expect. And there's going to come a point where you realize why that's not a normal thing. That's not an expectation. That's not how that role works. There's going to come a point where you have to realize that, or you're going to burn out. And when you try to then correct it, you have a much harder fight than if you kind of had approached it differently in the beginning. And so I think that's the main thing, knowing your boundaries and making sure you have a firm grasp and understanding of what is actually your role as a community manager. And that's to, as I said, again, to keep it in quick and short, easy terms, to cultivate a healthy and happy community. That's your ultimate goal. It doesn't mean you need to be there around the clock. It doesn't mean that you need to, have people slinging crap at you with a smile on your face either. It's not that. We're not a kicking stump for angry people. That's not how this goes. And we're also not like the helpline, 2:00 on a Saturday, you can DM the brand and expect them to answer you within minutes. It's not how that goes. It's, we have to understand that there's processes there. And, I think that's probably the most important thing, knowing your boundaries and knowing the role that you're in well enough to make sure that you don't set yourself up for, a crash and burn. Highly developed soft skills. Fergun, that's the soft skills thing is something that, some of that's like innate, natural kind of abilities, but you can always hone them too. You can always kind of sharpen them and practice them. I've been lucky. I've been able to attend certain trainings and things like that to help work on those soft skills and make them, kind of hone them a little, like I said, but you got to have that nugget there to start with. But yeah, constantly being cognizant of that and trying to make sure you keep that polished up. And making sure that you don't put yourself into a position where you're going to do yourself harm, because there's a lot of community managers. You see them a year into community, they got the bags under their eyes and the gray hairs, and they're just really, that's no way. That's not why we're in this. We want healthy and happy and positive communities. So, I guess that's like a big do and don't, but other than that, I think that everybody has, I'm hard pressed to tell somebody do's and don'ts, because I think that everybody brings their own approach. And again, that goes back to, as Fergun mentioned, as I mentioned earlier in the stream, the soft skills, I think that a lot of people have their own approaches. And again, as I said earlier, when we were talking about learning from those around you, being the community management team lead at Ubisoft and having these community managers, working on my team, I actually learned a lot from them in their approach to things. So, I think that everybody having a varying approach to it is a good thing. And I wouldn't really say that what's worked for me would work for you. I just know that when it comes down to it, the end all be all is to make sure you take care of yourself. It's the most important thing. And aside from that, just, treat people how you want to be treated, expect them to treat you like a human being, and make sure that you're doing your best to try to consider all sides of every equation. And that's really all you can do, and continue to learn, of course.
Yeah, it's so interesting. Fergan here, by the way, you probably don't know, but she's a community manager for a city, actually.
I could tell by the comments. Yeah.
Yeah, she knows something, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
And I want to pick up actually something she said much earlier about toxicity, because I had the same experience as well. Like, I mean, you get some toxic comments sometimes and messages when you're gaming, right?
Mhm.
And I tested it as well. Like, if I get like, somebody's whatever putting on me,
then I send them like a really nice message back, like a really nice message. And then
Yeah.
they turn around and actually apologizing for them being toxic.
Yeah.
And that's very interesting. I tested it a few times as well. So it does work, Fergan, I know. But she said here right now, you can learn some, but it has to be something that's in you from the start. Certain empathy things can't be learned.
That's absolutely right. They can't be learned, but they can be eroded over time, which is,
Hmm.
excuse me, something that I would definitely be cautious and cognizant of. I don't know, Fergun, if you'll agree with me, but um, they certainly can be eroded over time. It's becoming jaded. It happens. It's a fact of life that it can happen. And so making sure that you're protective of that will help you keep that layer on your empath skills and those, those soft skills too.
Yeah,
Because
right.
if you let them be worn down, I mean, ultimately you're losing an asset that helped get you where you are, you know?
Hmm.
Um, now I'm starting to get a frog in my throat. One of the things I was going to say though was,
We do a
um,
concert.
yeah, right. Dueling. One of the things I was going to say though, you mentioned somebody coming at you with toxicity and hitting them with the, I enjoy doing a thing that kind of, you know, I had a supervisor refer to it as dad voicing people. And what it is when somebody comes at you and they come at you in a way that's aggressive or hostile or toxic and they're doing something wrong, I've kind of like really enjoyed being able to relay back to them the effect of what they've said in a way that kind of makes them go, oh, well, that wasn't really what I wanted to do. Like a good example of it is I had somebody screaming at me about not answering them. And they kind of gave me like the 3 replies in a thread back to back, all 3 minutes apart. And it was like 2:00 in the morning on a Friday night. You know what I mean?
Hmm.
And so Saturday morning, I woke up to these emails and I was like, okay, so now this is an opportunity where, I'm going to do a little bit of my dad voice thing. So I jumped into the thread and I let them know. I made sure, number one, this is going to sound petty. I recognize it's kind of petty, but number one, I made sure not to answer their problem right then and there, not immediately, not first, because
Hmm.
I'm not going to reinforce your negative behavior by giving you what you wanted all along anyway. Number two, I'm
Okay.
going to make sure I tell you why it was wrong, what was wrong with it, and everything else. It's 2:00 in the morning on a Friday. I'm a dad. I have a 4-year-old daughter, and I was sleeping. That
Hmm.
happens. You know what I'm saying? Community managers are allowed to sleep. I don't have
No.
my phone's not plugged into my brain and it doesn't zap me when you hit submit on a forum post.
Yeah.
Um, laying all the things out that went wrong and then explaining to them, look, I'm out of office. I'm away from my computer. I will get back to you as soon as I am back to the computer. I've left a note for myself and everything, but I'm a human being with a work schedule. And unless this is an emergency, I have to take my time too. And I'm
Yes.
sorry, but balancing issues in a multiplayer game are not an emergency. Like we'll all get through the weekend without this being changed right now. I'll get that to the team as soon as I can. And they came back with, you're right. I'm really sorry. Blah, blah, blah. It's just that it happened then. And I wanted to comment while it was fresh in my mind. And it's like, then now they want to have a conversation with you about how they got there. And you're like, yeah, it's all right. I recognize that you kind of recognize where you went south. So thick skin with feels is a hell of a good way to say it. That's right.
It's interesting. Do you we can't it's too big of a topic. We have to talk about that another time.
Uh-oh.
Um Now I forgot my other question. God damn it.
Good
My
night,
brain.
everybody. No, I'm kidding.
Yeah. See you later. Um can a community manager actually set up an environment where players feel safe? Do they have that much of a power?
How do you mean?
Like from a community perspective, like can you build basically a gaming community by doing certain things like doing community events, um I don't know, building some kind of structures so people feel safe to play with each other, less toxicity. Can you think of any tools for that?
I mean, I like to think that I'm in that stage right now at Gun. And I like to think that we're doing some really interesting things. Obviously can't say anything more about them at this time, but I'm
It's only 18 people here.
yeah, it's fine. Just spill the beans. I think that we're doing some really cool things there. And I think that the best thing a community manager or community developer can do in that respect is to make sure that they are presenting they're presenting the issue to the development team in a way that makes sense to the development team. You know, like you can't come at them and say, we should do this crazy thing. You have to, I was just going through it the other day. You have to kind of present the ultimate goal of where you want to be and what you want this feature to achieve, right? And let them run with that, because one of the things that I think is most interesting about creatives in the game development industry is their ability to think around a situation, their ability to think around a problem. There's so much under the surface in game dev that is like these weird, crazy ways to get this end result that you would never think is it's not a straight line. It's not like, well, here's point A and here's point B, and we're going to draw a line between them. It's always, there's so many things that are just this crazy way around to get to the end result, and they make things happen. I mean, there are stories you can hear of, you know, different things game designers do in order to get the end result they want, and the workarounds and the ways they develop to that point. That I think presenting the information, presenting the goal to them and letting them run wild with it, you end up finding some really interesting things. And that's kind of the stage that I'm kind of trying to embrace right now, is saying, you know, we want people to feel safe online. We want people to feel their online interactions, they have some control over them, right? Because I mean, everybody's sick and tired of the kids screaming into the microphone, being a little crazy person, or throwing out, you know, profanities or slurs or things like that, or being sexist or racist or homophobic, all of those things that you hear in like online chat that gets on everyone's nerves and can be really hurtful. People want to exist without that, right? So how do we make sure that we're building our systems for voice and text and things like that to protect those people, you know, give them the control over the situation, to say, yep, don't want to hear anything from you ever again, you know, and I don't want to hear from you ever. Because let's be honest, reporting them and getting them in trouble on the game, that's something that exists. It's a process with some hurdles and some things, and usually has to be validated and everything else.
Do you think there's enough systems actually?
I don't currently. I think right now, a lot of it requires too much of the player, right? I think that's the biggest issue, because like, for instance, it's not uncommon in a game where if you experience somebody saying something racist, you can't just submit a ticket and say, they said a racist word to me. You need footage or recording, or the team needs to have some kind of recording or some kind of footage or something like that in order to back that up and to verify that, right? So like, there's all this other stuff that gets involved, and it gets to be a bit of a process. And then you have to have a banning structure. And I mean, not that you shouldn't anyway, you should of course have a banning structure anyway, but you need to have set terms and rules and things, and a structure to, oh, well, you get a ban for this long, then this long, then this long. And there's all this other process that goes into it, right? So to the person who was the victim of the negativity or the racism or whatever the case was, to them, it feels like nothing's happening. And the reason I say I don't think we have enough systems is because I still want all of those other systems in place. I still want us to take out that trash, right? I still want us to be capable of taking out that trash, but I want to give you something that you can feel in the moment has changed your environment right then and there, without any other nonsense, so that we can go through all those other processes, but your situation immediately on a personal level has improved now. You don't have to wait the 6 months for him to end up finally permanently banned. You know what I mean? Like, your situation is now better somehow. And so that's where I think we could be working and investing a lot of effort, because you don't see that very often. You don't see folks feeling like, you know, they get that improved experience right then and there. So yeah, more in-game features and things I think would be massive. I think there's a lot there that has yet to be explored too. So, but again, you know, if there's a theme of this conversation, it's my being, anyone in community really, but community management's interest in healthy communities. And that is another element of making sure you're maintaining a healthy community.
Yeah.
It's making sure that people aren't being harassed in your game.
I mean,
every
the
day.
bigger the game, the more difficult probably it gets again, right?
Of course. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. I mean, you worked for pretty toxic games, I guess. So you know probably both sides now, how it is.
Absolutely. And I've worked on some big games that, Rainbow Six, for instance. Rainbow Six has always had very clear, very, they've constantly, Rainbow Six has constantly tried to at least do everything they can to meet the toxicity and correct and work toward correcting it at every stage, right?
Mm-hmm.
They're very proactive in it, and they're not shy to do anything because they're,
I have a
they're Rainbow
question.
Six. But
I have an idea. Sorry, quick, that I
no,
put
go
into
for
your
it.
words. People are, okay, I say something. Don't hit me. People are stupid. Okay. So you can influence every fucking person you want if you just give them enough pictures, right? So why don't studios, if they really want to change something, build up influences to, let's say they want to have more acceptance for equality, right? So we are doing actually an event next week for equality.
Mhm.
So equality means a lot of things. It can mean transgender, it can be female, it can be people with disabilities, can be all these kinds of things. But if you look to the big influencers in the world, most of them don't have any issues. They're
Mhm.
good looking people, good looking folks, because that's what sells as well, right? So why don't studios work explicitly more with influencers with who are not normal, so to speak, to
Mhm.
build up a community and a society, um, so we accept it more, you
Yeah.
know, because the more we see it, the more we accept it.
Well, and I think that's kind of a widespread ideal, right? Because the more you see um, representation in games and movies, the more, you know what I mean, and the more you see representation of the for instance, Ubisoft has a openly gay, I want to say, yeah, openly gay operator coming to Rainbow Six, and people are saying, oh, but there's stories about these other operators. Well, this one's openly because there's nothing to be not open about this. So I think that representation, it's a widespread ideal in the respect that representation goes a long way to normal. I hate saying normalize because I don't feel like there's anything abnormal there, but um, normalize to everyone, to a wider audience, these types of things, and that's why awareness on something matters. A lot of people say, well, why bring this up all the time? And it's, well, you bring it up for awareness. And the more it becomes part of the collective conscience, the zeitgeist, the
Hmm.
norm, whatever you want to say,
Yeah, the more
um,
it gets accepted,
that's
and you
right.
don't even have to. Yeah.
And so normalize in that sense, not that there's anything abnormal about any of it, but normalize in that sense. Normalize as in, let's make sure that this is a part of everyday life every time you boot up the game or whatever, because this is a part of everyday life for a lot of folks, and there's nothing to hide or nothing to shy away from here. And I think that's why that kind of thing is so important. And I think that then you will start to see more, because there's creators out there too, there is an imbalance of those creators, but I think empowering them and making them feel comfortable and doing whatever we can as just people in the industry to make sure that we're making them feel comfortable being out there, you'll see a hell of a lot more of them, and then we can embrace them and they can run with the ball and do all those great things. But I really think it all goes back to that one root of awareness and just putting it out there in front of everyone's faces and saying, this is nothing to be weird about. This is nothing we need to shy away from, and this should be in games. Nothing wrong with it.
Yeah, definitely.
I mean, I hate that. I know that's kind of like not really an answer. But
No, it's
that's
okay.
really,
I understood why it's not really an answer. It's okay.
yeah.
Um, I would say we actually have to get to an end, guys. So this is
Yeah,
your
I just
last
noticed
chance.
it's 10 after 5.
It's actually really late. So guys, if you have a last question, to Matt here, please let me know. And Joe, be so nice, or Fire, just put his link in the chat quick again. Um, And for you, my friend Matt, do you have any final words for us? Do you have anything we missed here talking about, or um, anything at all?
No, honestly, my final words, I would like to, well, first off, I would like to say, congratulations to, Mr. Dan Mitri there in the chat. I didn't not notice your recent career developments, and I just want to say congratulations, buddy. I think that's really cool. Um, Aside from that, I wanted to say thank you for having me on this podcast. I believe fully in what you're doing here, and
Thank you.
I really
Much
I think this
appreciated.
is such a cool thing, and I'm just so happy that I could hang out and talk with you about it. And I wanted to
Likewise.
thank everybody in chat for hanging out and listen to me jibber jabber about community. It means a lot to me, and I hope I was a good guest. But otherwise, thank you so much for letting me be a part of this.
Absolutely. Likewise. It was amazing talking to you, Matt. You made it really easy. Thank you. I was so surprised actually that this worked out so easily, and you were like, "Yeah, let's do this, let's walk." And I was like, "Oh, all right." So it's I think this is also the one thing I learned, guys, again. Don't be afraid to ask. Don't be afraid to ask. Don't think anyone has too much of a name or whatever it is. If you want to talk to somebody, whatever it is, and I'm not talking about I want to have something from you, it's just like have a conversation, open up and conversation, be you, be honest, and things will happen, and there's nothing you can lose. It's only, you can only gain, you can only learn. It was really great. Thank you so much.
Yeah,
Um,
I'm completely thankful to you. So thank you very much.
All right, so we have to spread the love. Let me reach quick the last comments. Not that I miss. Yeah, thank you.